summertime in Oklahoma City, and of course, it seems like Oklahoma weather is always extreme, and now we've hit the 90-degree temperatures, which by Oklahoma standards is really not that extreme, but happy to talk some heat as well as some other safety issues with the gentleman right here, James Winham. He is the COO with EMSA. James, it's very nice to meet you, and thanks for stopping by today.
Well, thank you for having me. Nice meeting you, too. You're absolutely right. Really, really hot, and it's. I hear there may be rain tomorrow, but we've had a stretch of some really hot temperatures, and it's seeming to take a toll on a lot of Oklahomans, especially those that have to work outside in this heat quite a bit.
Let's back up just a little bit. You mentioned the rain. Of course, we had heaps of rain just a month or two ago with all the flooding. You guys had to deal with that as well. Give us an overview of the services that EMSA provides.
EMSA, as you know, is the ambulance service for metropolitan Oklahoma City and also metropolitan Tulsa area. About 14 different communities that we serve exclusively in both metropolitan areas. EMSA came into existence back in 1976 in Tulsa, and in Oklahoma City joined the EMSA group in 1990 when they combined both Tulsa and Oklahoma City at that point in time.
And that's a little bit of a difference that you would see from other, perhaps, communities or big cities.
Yes, that's true. Especially, separated by the turnpike and almost 100 miles apart, but they do share the same ambulance service. It's a very sophisticated clinical EMS service. In fact, we're the 13th largest EMS system combined in the United States when you take everything into account. But what's interesting about it is the clinical sophistication of it. We have the same protocols for treating medical patients in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa also, or even down the turnpike or any of the municipalities that we also serve. So do the fire departments, so do the first responders. They have one single medical director, one single medical control board that established the standard of care that's what's best for the citizens we serve, and that's across the two largest cities in Oklahoma. So it's very unique.
And you guys have really come up with the one voice, one system. In fact, we were talking before we went live here about you might see an EMSA unit sitting at a convenience store. There's a rhyme and a reason for that.
That's very true. People are very familiar with fire stations in that they're geographically spread out throughout a city. They may be in a neighborhood, or they may be downtown. Fire departments and EMSA somewhat have the same mission, but they have a different mission. Fire departments have to protect buildings and structures that may not be occupied at time. EMSA's primary mission is patient-centric, to take care of patients when they become ill or injured. So people tend to move around. For example, some areas that during the daytime people may be at work, and there's a lot of people down working in this particular area, but in the evening after 5, when they go home after work, they may go back into the suburbs or to their homes. So people switch quite a bit during the day, days of the week, and during the weekend. So as that occurs, our job is to go to where people actually are. So we know, based on what we call system status management, historical data, over 30 years of data that we look at constantly, and we take into account road conditions, road construction. Weather is a big one too.
Sure,
time of day.
If a street's going to flood,
right.
Do I need to be on the left side, the right side?
Absolutely.
How can I get up and down Broadway Extension?
And things like marathons, or things like the slide the city that occurred.
I drove by the other day, Saturday morning, as preparations were going on. You had 2 units at the bottom of the hill.
Right. So we strategically place ambulances based on what the conditions are, and we have a plan for every hour of the day, every day of the week, 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year. On a Christmas day, it may be a little bit different as opposed to a Monday at 12 o'clock.
Sure.
So it's very unique. We are able to pinpoint with great accuracy where the next call is going to come in. So that's why we base at different locations, and it'll change. A unit may, in a shift, they may have 6 or 7 different locations that they go and what we call post or be at station. And in some cases, it may be the hospital. Oklahoma City is somewhat unique because of the number of hospital facilities there are. They're somewhat geographically spread out. If you think about the hospitals and where they are, there's some up north, some down south. So in the opportunity that we may be dropping off a patient at that point in time, that sometimes can fill as a shift. It's close to an area where it should be.
How long is a shift?
Traditionally, it's 12-hour shifts. Some services have 24, some have 48, some have 8, some have 4. We predominantly have all 12-hour shifts because they're very busy. We have some 8-hour shifts, we have some 6 hours. And depends on if it's a normal street shift, it's usually 12, but if it's a special event, or maybe we need some peak load, we know there's going to be a lot of people in Bricktown for, I'm using that as an example, for some type of event or something.
Maybe it's Reggae Fest this week.
It could be, absolutely. We may have 4-hour shift here, 6-hour shift there based on what's going on. And if you throw in maybe a Thunder game or maybe a concert that goes on all in conjunction, we'll add shifts accordingly based on what we expect may happen.
I guess I should have known this. I never even really considered it, but that makes a whole lot of sense for you guys to sort of be on standby near large clusters of people.
Right, right. You know, there's always an opportunity. We hope that nothing goes wrong, but we always want to be prepared. We work very closely with the law enforcement agencies and the fire departments, and as I mentioned earlier before, Oklahoma City Fire, let's talk about them, for example. They have paramedic, ALS, first response, engine-capable units. They have the same medical director. Some of those paramedics may have worked at EMSA before in the past, so there's a great working relationship there. Our system is very patient-centric, so we want to make sure the patient is taken care of the best way they can. So we work hand-in-hand with all the first responders, predominantly Oklahoma City Fire, because we train with them a lot. They do all the rescue. A lot of times their first response or they're first on the scene, have the patient stabilized and ready to go by the time we get there. So it's a great working relationship. Fortunately, the citizens of Oklahoma City have a very well clinically sophisticated EMS system from both the fire and the EMSA side.
Talking with James Winham, the COO of EMSA. And James, I was looking at your website. I didn't know you could actually request an EMSA unit for your own personal event. Or, you know, hey, I'm having a big event.
Right, and we encourage that if you're having something like, you know, Reggae Fest, Slide the City, or maybe a large block party.
Or maybe here the Oklahoman, exactly.
Right.
A block party wants to have something outside here.
Let us know. We'll see what we can do. We can adjust our plan if necessary. If we think talking with them that there is a high probability of somebody could be hurt or injured or something like that, we can work out a special event, or we could have a crew specifically assigned to that incident, depending on what the nature of it is. We also have what we call touch-a-truck or talking tours for the schools, daycares, things like that, where you can schedule those. And we'll bring a crew out. You know, as long as we can, that there's not a major incident or something. It's very rare, but sometimes that does occur. And we'll come out, allow the children and the faculty and folks just to have a look at what's inside an ambulance and what these paramedics do. I think a lot of times they see things on TV, and sometimes that's not quite as accurate with what we do, but we do have mobile emergency rooms almost sometimes that we drive around and take the care to the patient in their time of need. You know, medications for help with the heart, help breathing, things like that. A lot of things that can be done in ER. We can start that, initiate that in the field under the supervision of a physician, and then do the best we can for the patient, stabilize them, and then get them to definitive care and get them to the right definitive care, the right hospital that can take care of them.
We mentioned off the top of this segment the heat safety, and before we get to that, James, I want to back up and talk about you a little bit. You've had a very interesting career as a paramedic. I believe you've been the guy up in the helicopter as well. How did you get started?
I've been very fortunate, you know, and we talked about TV, and I hate to bring it up, but I'm from that generation that watched Emergency.
I remember that show.
Yeah, I do. Johnny and Roy. My dad had a van, and I had a fold-up little cot deal, and I always was shoving it in the back and hitting the back of the door.
You're saving lives right and left.
I knew at an early age, and I grew up in a fire station. My dad's a retired firefighter from Lawton. I have two brothers that are firefighters. In fact, I'm a retired firefighter from Tulsa, as a matter of fact. I began my career in Lawton, came to AmCare in Oklahoma City in the early 80s, worked here up until when EMSA took over the contract here, and I transferred to Tulsa, worked another 4 years, spent about 16 more years in the system on the fire department. During that time, I was able to get my registered nurse license, and I flew as a flight paramedic for quite a bit, for about 10 years.
How was that?
It's interesting. It's very interesting. You know, in this job, you see people at their worst, the worst
when
days
they need you the most
that you're ever having. Yes, and it's kind of the same in the helicopter it is on the streets. But it's interesting. I always said, when I thought I've seen it all, there's always something else. So it's a rewarding job. My dad taught me in life that our job is to take care of people. He was a public servant, and I've just followed that throughout my career. And based on what he did and what he started the first ambulance down in Lawton, as a matter of fact. It's called a rescue squad. And that was his claim to fame down there, him and a couple other friends down there on the fire department. So I've kind of based my career off what he's done, and I've enjoyed it. I've had the best jobs in the world. I've been very, very fortunate to be able to help people in their time of need.
I show up and talk on camera. He comes from a family that starts ambulance services, saving lives. James, let's get back to the heat safety. What do we need to know on these? Not even to the dog days of summer yet. Before the pre-dog days of summer, what do we need to know to stay safe?
You know, initially people got caught off guard. We had all that rain and it was cool out, and then we got hit with those really hot, humid days, and it caught people off guard. They hadn't really acclimated a lot to it, and it takes a couple weeks, especially if you're working outside, to get acclimated to this type of heat. In fact, last weekend I'm the one preaching it, and I seem to think that I'm somewhat bulletproof, and the wife had me doing some yard work, and I overdid myself, and I felt it coming on, and fortunately I need to stop and go inside.
What are some of those signs?
That's what I was getting to, you're right. Little dizziness, you know, my heart had a faster heart rate, and I felt really sick at my stomach. So it's somewhat of a progression when you're out in the heat like that. The best way to treat it is to prevent it. So you want to think ahead, plenty of fluids, 2 to 4 glasses of water. Now, if you're on medications or on a salt-restricted diet or something like that, talk with your primary care physician or primary care provider and let them explain to you how much water you should have. Another point is if you're on some types of medications, antihistamines or blood pressure medications, ACE inhibitors, things like that, talk with your healthcare provider and let them give you some ideas on how much water you should take, sports drinks and stuff like that. And the big thing is to limit your time that you're outdoors. If you have to do something when it's really hot during the day, you know, prepare yourself. Try to limit that. Wear loose, light-colored clothing, big floppy hat over your head to kind of, you know, sunglasses help. Of course, sunshade or sunscreen is very important, at least a SPF of 15 or higher. And plenty of breaks. Stay in the shade when you can, air conditioning, and if you start feeling funny, you know, you start getting cramps, nauseated, just not feeling right, it's time to stop and get inside and cool yourself off.
I was about to ask you, when you start to notice some of these warning symptoms, hey, wait a minute, heart rate's up a little bit, feeling a little nauseous, what are the best steps to take there, aside from just shutting it down?
If you can't get inside, you want to get in a shaded area as quick as, you know, as soon as you can. Sit down, lie down, raise up your feet, take fluids if you can. Water's usually the best, or whatever your physician has prescribed to you if he wants you to take, you know, a sports drink or something like that if you have medical conditions, but usually water's the best. And then make sure somebody's with you or let somebody know, because this could progress. You know, if you're not going to cool off fast enough, the worst is what they call heat stroke. You've heard of that. Usually when the body's core temperature gets above 104 degrees, then it's a dire medical emergency. There's 2 types. There's classic heat stroke, which is somebody that may be in an area that's not air conditioned or ventilated or something like that. It takes a few days and their body temperature gets really, really high. And it doesn't come on very quick. It can take a while, but you know, they're not really sweating, and then it just comes on after this time. The second type is exertional, which we're all familiar with. You're out playing football, digging a hole, working construction or something like that, you know, just really working out in the heat of the day, and that can come on pretty quick. And usually it's a progression. Sometimes there's cramps. Sometimes there's a little lightheadedness, nausea, even some vomiting sometimes, and then it progresses to the point where you become delirious, maybe unconscious. There's a saying that says, well, they stop sweating. Well, internally they do, but if you're doing exertional type exercises, you're not just going to dry up all of a sudden. So that's not a good sign to think of. It's just something to keep in the back of your head. Public should try to cool them off as quickly as possible, get them in the shade, pour some water on them, fan them. If they've got a lot of clothes on them, you want to try to remove any bulky clothing that they have off so that their skin can be exposed to the air. Maybe pour some water on them and fan them, and then help with the evaporation of the water. That's why we sweat. We get out in the wind and that evaporates. This is one of the body's best way of trying to cool itself down. But don't take any chances with this. If you think somebody is sick, call 911, call your primary care physician, get them help right away. Don't leave them alone. And I kind of segue into the next thing is hot vehicles too. We've seen a lot of people, especially children, left in a hot vehicle. It heats up extremely quick in this type of temperature when the windows are up, and you're talking 10 degrees in a very, very short time, 120 degrees very, very short time, and people just cannot survive in that. So always remember, especially, you hear these heartbreaking stories of they forgot their young one in the back seat or something like that, and it happens to everybody. So you need to think about that. Put something that's important back there, your cell phone. I've heard of some people take off your left shoe. I don't know about that. Just your briefcase or something that you're going to have to take out.
To remind you, hey.
Yeah, just remind that somebody's in the back. And even if you're going inside the store for a second, it's not as safe. Never leave anyone in an unattended car, especially a child. Absolutely just detrimental. Cannot do that.
He's James Winham, a wealth of information. COO of EMSA. It's the hot days of summer here, 90 degrees. We are expecting some cooler temperatures heading into the weekend and a chance of storms, so that'll be a nice break. James, it's been very interesting and great to meet you. I really appreciate the conversation here, and hopefully we can have you back on a regular basis to further the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Look forward to it.
One of our partners here in Oklahoma City. In fact, they're located not too far from our downtown studios. James Winham from EMSA.